Hello and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Today on the show we have joining us University Distinguished Professor of History at NDSU and Prairie Public contributor for our radio network, Tom Isern. Tom, thanks for joining us today.
It is a pleasure. Thank you, John.
Tom, as you join us, of course, you're here today to talk about your newly published book, Pacing Dakota. And we're going to get to that in just a little while, but before we do, tell the folks out there a little bit about yourself and maybe your background, where you're originally from.
Well, the first thing you know is I'm thankful to you for holding up the book, first thing. And I suppose what that means is I've come to identify myself more and more as an author, as a writer. And I'm about to reach my 70. And I think that's where I'm gravitating to in my personal conception of myself. But in origin, I'm a farm boy from western Kansas. I still have that farm, by God. Mm-hmm. And God willing, I'll see it into the 7th generation before I go. That's with me every day. I'm a plains person, lived all my life on the Great Plains of North America, except for a little time offshore, usually in other grassy places. And I'm a thoroughgoing academic. I don't know what I do without 19, 20-year-olds around every day. And, of course, a Bison fan, John, you bet.
Well, good.
Is that enough?
Good. Well, that's plenty. For people out there, they might think of the speech 7 years ago and might figure out your age on that one. Yeah. All right, so tell us about the book. What is this book about, and why did you write it?
Well, you know, I do these weekly pieces for your radio branch here. And I'm wonderfully well treated there, so I keep coming back here. The other day, Ashley was filling in for Skip to record one. She said, "You know, that's number 700." I thought, well, yeah, it'd have to be about that many. It's probably 725 or so now. Well, those things do accumulate on you, and they have an interesting tone because of the orality of them. You know, they're written to be delivered into a microphone, which I believe makes better writing on the page. It's been good for me to be have this relationship with Prairie Public, I have to tell you, John. Well, so that stuff accumulated, and I've put together sketches, things like that before. In this case, I think I explained this in the prologue of the book, the compilation took a little bit different direction. And it's not just because of my doddering age at the moment. I realized after I'd hit send on the manuscript, my mother had passed away, just as I was beginning this. And as I worked with the material, writing what I call the connecting tissue between what are discrete stories, although they're thematic, you know, they're not disconnected. As I was writing that connecting tissue, that part began to take over, until in the end I realized what I had was, God forbid, a memoir.
Well, so there you are, part memoir, part recopying some of the great commentaries you've done, but with all that, tell us why you have such a love for the Great Plains and the folklore here and all that.
Well, I was born to it, after all, and then probably born to be a historian because it seemed like I've always had maybe gotten on better with the people who were older than me. I've had a lot of great mentors in my life, but otherwise I just tend to be, you know, if I'm going into a cafe, I'm probably going to sit with people who are older than me. You know, I tap memory just as a natural inclination. But that business of an affinity for the Great Plains, there is that childhood imprinting that Wallace Stegner wrote about. You know, you're imprinted with an early environment, and you never really shake it, even though some people try. I don't try anymore. And then it links up with a whole academic tradition, what I refer to as the regional project, which comes out of places like Texas and Montana. And from about 1950 on, it came out of North Dakota Agricultural College State University with the Institute for Regional Studies. This idea that it's a good thing for scholars of a particular place to cast down their buckets where they are. Not to be parochial, because, you know, I do work in offshore and other countries too, but that they should have a familiarity and possibly an affection for the things nearby. And so I'm a prairie boy, but also a prairie scholar.
Well, with that said, do you think people around here take some of that for granted just because maybe they grew up here or maybe they live here and take it for granted?
Undoubtedly, undoubtedly. One of the things I do around North Dakota, and particularly down in the German-Russian region, is work for the development of heritage tourism. And I'm preaching the same sermon again and again. You are so familiar with this stuff, you don't realize how interesting it is. You know, the Wishick Badger is a great photo op. Why aren't you promoting that? Or in the book is the story of Wilhelmina Geisler, the martyr mother of the German Russians, who died trying to rescue her daughter from a prairie fire in 1898. Oh, there are stories all spun around that thing. And we should honor her with proper dignity, but also realize that's a heritage resource. People want to go to that ridge where she died. They want to honor her grave in the Ashley Cemetery. They want to see the ceramic bust of her in the Ashley Heritage Center. And no one was talking about this. Well, I'm trying to generate that chatter.
Well, with that said, could you pick a passage out for us and maybe read just a little bit from your book?
Well, why not something of autumn? Because it may not look like it this very morning when we're recording, but I relish autumn in this part of the country, and we are technically still in that season. Oh, also, I recently visited mountain for the Deuce of August. Very impressed with local Icelandic culture, and so here I go. A century ago, in Munich, North Dakota, a baby boy of Icelandic descent was named by his parents for the first white European child born in the New World, Snorri Thorfinnsson. The boy grew up in North Dakota and among kin in Manitoba. He graduated from North Dakota Agricultural College, went on to a distinguished career as a professional extension worker and an amateur, which term I use with reverence, referring to its Latin root, an amateur historian. Thorfinnsson died in 1986 in the community of his retirement, Fort Ransom. He was one of those citizen historians who went about investing his home country with story and meaning. He was fascinated with Indian antiquities, burial mounds, the writing rock, and especially with what he took to be evidence of early Norse presence in the region. Viking mooring stones along the Cheyenne River, he said. This sort of myth-making is easy to parody, and many professional historians, such as I, would do so. But whereas I may joke about such matters, I will not denigrate them. I see in Snorri Thorfinnsson a purity and sincerity that I cannot match, but I still may emulate. I got to thinking about this while doing the grouse opener, which involved a 10-mile hike through the grand prairie pastures of the Missouri Coteau. My retriever is young, and I am old. So now and then I find a seat on a pile of glacial rock and just contemplate the countryside. I remember that Snorri, a bird hunter and a sometime poet, he was Icelandic after all, once wrote, "God help us to appreciate autumn's rare and glorious days."
You can write and set a picture. I just think of all the visualization I put together with that story there that you read.
Yeah, and of course I put my picture of my Labrador Retriever in there too.
Well, let's change a little bit from the book. Talk about your life as a history professor and what all that entails.
Well, so this morning I got up dark 30, 5:15 or so, and polished off a paper that I'm delivering at a conference in San Antonio next week. So every day I live the life of a scholar. You can't beat that, by God. You can't beat it. I feel like I'm at the top of the game as a professional historian, and so there's that. And then I set to work getting ready for the class that met just before I came over here today, because I'm always behind. I am never really ahead of the students. And then I met the students, and there's a bunch of 19, 20-year-olds, and that's good. I kind of need a shot at that, if not every day, multiple times in the week. And I'll get home late afternoon today, and I'll have a long, dark, early winter evening to face with a fire and barrister bookshelves above my computer desk at home, and I'll start perhaps working on a couple new pieces for radio on Prairie Public. Does that sound pretty good?
Well, it does, but so you're really a researcher and a historian.
Yeah.
Expand more on that, because how much research do you do?
We're a research university. We keep preaching that, all right. I take that seriously. When I came to Emporia, that's where I was before, and there was a similar story there. I didn't think I'd be there that long, and came here to NDSU, and particularly after I left administration at NDSU, because I did that for a while and then thought, I didn't write a dissertation to do this. I thought, and I'll do this, and I'll probably make a move to a research university somewhere and sign dissertations. Well, NDSU, of course, became that place, and I stayed here. And, I'll run the table out here, John, because I would never have as many PhD students at, where shall we put me? At Colorado, University of Colorado, or someplace like that, as I will here. I'm probably supposed to be here.
Well, we're glad you are here. Talk about some of your travels. You get out, you got New Zealand.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's that like to get to travel and see places like that?
Man, it's good work if you can get it, isn't it? My Suzanne and I, we have a joint long-term research line of research going on in Otago, the southernmost province of New Zealand, and based out of the University of Otago, the southernmost university in the world, and then we go up in the high country. Oh, and here's the hard part. We've been working on this for years. We've got down to the recent times where the grassland region we study there has gone over to viticulture. So we have to study grape growing and winemaking. And when they get a couple writers show up at the cellar door, they break out the good stuff, John. Well, now I'm making that a little light, but I do work in New Zealand, Australia, and have in the prairie provinces of Canada. So as not to be parochial. In terms of my profession, it makes me more alive to contingencies. Things don't have to go in the history of a grassland region the way they did here. They might unfold quite differently, and they do.
Also understand you have a love for prairie churches.
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, I was the first baby baptized in the church in which I was confirmed back home in western Kansas. So I come back by that honestly. By my mother's reckoning, I was supposed to be a man of the cloth. That wouldn't have ended well. But I really value the prairie churches of North Dakota as a locus of community and memory. So last Sunday night we were up at St. Mary's Church in North Barnes County, near Daisy, in this shelter belt of trees that they planted around 1900. And wonderful setting there, beautiful church. But most of all, walk in there, there's people all over the place I know in that parish. When I've done historical work and preservation work around that area, and we're sitting down there for the fall supper, and I've gone down and helped them cut kraut. These are the ties that bind. What we need more of in older times and in present times are connections of community on the Great Plains, and so I will nourish those wherever I find them.
Well, so you talk about the Great Plains. Are the Great Plains in decline, or are they just in transition?
They're both. It can depend on where you are. I grew up in what I always call the last picture show generation. Everybody remembers when the picture show closed in their hometown or in the hardware store and all the rest of them, and we always assumed things were in inevitable decline. And then in the 1990s, I'm grateful for digital storage such that on my hard drive are dated documents where I can show that in the mid-1990s, I was going around saying in North Dakota, we've reached the end of the period of decline and consolidation. It's still going to go on. There's a lot of inertia to that yet, but people are moving here on purpose, and we need to be planning to have a future here instead of planning our dismantlement. Of course, the petroleum boom made all this kind of idle reflection, but it's still going on in Enderlin and all these other towns there yet. It's no longer absolute out-migration. There are new people in all these towns.
Yeah. So how do you find your commentary subjects and then sit down and write about them?
I'm always doing scholarly footnoted stuff, right? Well, there are a lot of spin-offs from that. I've got stacks of material, and here's an interesting piece that doesn't fit what I'm working on, but it's darn interesting. Or here's what I'm working on, and we have a high level of intellectual consumers here, and I find as I go around the state, people are interested in fairly serious scholarship and what those professors are doing. It's hard to get away after meeting with people in small towns around the state. So some of it comes from that way. And there's a heck of a lot of what I call roadkill, because I'm traveling the region all the time. And there's a story up every section road, probably layers of stories up every section road. And I pick them up and bring them home.
So do sometimes they sit on the shelf for a long time, or do you try to write about them right away?
There's stuff that sits on the shelf, and there's stuff that just sits in here. And oh yeah, I remember what so-and-so said when this came up, when we were out there in Linton or Tioga or some such place. Memory's a wonderful thing.
Mm. What are some of your commentaries that have gotten lots of reaction?
I've been telling the story of Wilhelmina Geisler. Remember I mentioned her?
You did.
I got to be careful telling that story. People start crying. And I was feeling bad about that. And then I realized, wait a minute, I cried when I wrote that thing too. Mm-hmm. So it got a reaction from me, and it definitely gets from the hearers, the pure pathos of that story. A lot of the German-Russian stories are deeply tragic like that. I think other ones that I hear from people about are things that have to do with food. As part of the regional project, I think we need a Great Plains cuisine, and I'm working on that every day. And tomatillos are my new thing here this year, but whether it's fish and game, I'm the guy who eats northern pike and thinks they're better than walleye. By God, it's our state fish. And people love to talk about food, and which ties to gardening and ties to recreational outdoor life too. All that stuff that's palpable, stuff you can touch and taste and smell, which kind of goes along with my philosophy of doing life on the Great Plains. It's a sensate deal. It's a rich experience of the senses.
Now, Tom, you talk about the ones that have gotten reaction,
yeah.
But are they your favorites, or do you have some others that are some of your favorites?
Well, some of my favorites are kind of the think piecey types, John.
Okay.
And you get to a certain point and those things happen, and you make people listen to them whether they want to or not. But that, again, it's that thing. We've got a high level. Why am I on your radio at Prairie Public here? It's because people actually tolerate a pretty serious level of discourse. And look at us here doing long form on a scholarly book here on Prairie Public. Where else can you get that? Well, it's public broadcasting, and it's public broadcasting in North Dakota. You can do that.
Okay. Well, with that said, you love to write and talk about things like six-man football,
Yeah,
or small-town basketball. Why do you think these are important things in a community?
Oh, they're gathering places. You know, in old days of six-man football, before there were lights, you'd pull the cars up all around the field, you know, and people would turn on their headlights, you know, and then they honk their horns for touchdowns. Which in six-man, there's a lot of honking going on. there's a lot of scoring. Well, so just take that as your metaphor. It's literally that gathering in a circle type thing. Those get my interest wherever I go. Whether it's a six-man football game, it's the coffee clutch at the Cenex station, which is usually a circle also. It's a fall supper at Daisy Catholic Church or the hundreds of others across the state. Those not just get my attention, I just want to linger in them.
With that said, Tom, is there another passage you could read for us right now?
Let's do it. We'll do it. Oh, okay, so this is one of those kind of think-piecey ones, all right? But it also mentions somebody else you recognize, a couple people. People think I sometimes am unduly harsh with Elwyn Robinson, the longtime historian at the University of North Dakota, but actually I revere him. And so I talk about that here, and then it goes to this. So let us praise Elwyn Robinson. And then let us do him the honor of emulating him, of looking about us, seeing things as they are, and telling new stories that will serve the next generation as well as he served the one previous. This is a hard teaching. It removes the fate of our home country from the realm of determinisms and places it into the realm of contingencies. We do not know what's coming up the pike, but it will be up to us, not some higher power or disembodied force, to deal with it. A great poet of my own generation on the plains, Timothy Murphy, spoke for us in Set the Plowshare Deep, just as the 20th century gave way to the 21st. The steeples are toppled and the land unpeopled, reclaimed by thistle and buffalo grass. We were, you see, a tragic generation on the plains, false-fronted, too much mistaked, dispossessed on a cold flat top of a country. What remained for us was to finish our part in a morality play. We were, as Tim wrote, learning how to die with our feet stuck in the muck and our eyes trained on the sky. And I went on to write about Tim and I as a kind of being, we thought a year or two ago at the height of our powers. And then Tim passed away on me last summer, just before this book appeared. But I still think he may be at the height of his powers.
With that said, you've done a lot of things, and the history department at NDSU seems to be well thought of. Can you talk about that? Because you've been a big part of that.
Well, I'm its major propagandist, and I've had a part in hiring the new people there. Person per person, I'll stack this up. Don't tell your friend Matt O'Lean I said this. I'll stack it up against any Big Ten department. Because everybody can teach, but every person in that, every faculty member is published with a scholarly press, including Cambridge University Press, University of Pennsylvania Press, University of North Carolina Press. And all the senior people have multiple works with scholarly presses. And I still go in and teach freshmen. Yeah? And so that's a remarkable place where I've never known a state university department like it. Oh, there, I got my whole pitch in there, didn't I, John?
You did pretty good there. Did you ever dream starting out that you would end up in Fargo?
Oh my God, no. But I knew that, I decided fairly early in my career I belonged at a land-grant university, and it should be one on the plains. And this was the one that came up.
So, what's been the reaction to the book so far?
Well, in first place, it's gone to second printing. There's one a nutshell answer. But in second place, I have, been to Williston and all points between here and there, doing readings, talks, singing a little bit, and everywhere I go, there are these people we've never laid eyes on one another, but they think they know me, and it's because of Prairie Public, the radio pieces. And so it starts off like Old Home Week everywhere I go. Now, I hope the book has a wider conception. You know, we're kind of in the second marketing phase. Okay, we're cool here in North Dakota. Will we break out into broader markets and go for the prizes and that sort of thing? That's yet to be seen. It's worth it already for the response I've felt from people here. No.
So what's next for Tom Isern?
Well, I got another book in press at Texas A&M University Press. You know, I asked my students last night, does anybody here really like to write? And none of them said they really like to write, but I do. So I'll be writing hard another 20 years here, John.
So if people want a copy of this book or find out more information, where's the best place to go?
You know, it's in all the bookstores around the region. You can go to ndsUpress.org, order it direct there. That's my favorite place to plug, possibly. After that, go to a good independent bookstore, and it's on the other online providers too.
Well, Tom, we're out of time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Well, that's all we have on Prairie Pulse this week. And as always, thanks for watching.
Funding provided by the Members of Prairie Public.